That's very disappointing and annoying. I don't know. There are parts of this that I was... Are we recording now?
We are recording, but we
Okay.
don't have to, like, start.
I think that we ended up having, like... There was one show that we were in one night. There was...
Damn, you know what? I'm
What?
not recording audio right now.
Oh.
I actually don't remember if we talked about it during episode 1. I don't think...
I think we talked about, like, we're like, oh, that guy's pretty cool. Because I think we both... I don't think we did it in a weird southern accent like that, but I think both of us thought it was, like, pretty sweet that this dude... We probably should have been like, yeah,
Would have been cooler if we
this
did.
guy's pretty badass. Marok looks pretty cool. Yeah, that, like, dope character design.
Mhm.
Like, it vaguely looked like a bridge between the Inquisitors and the Knights of Ren. And that's 100% what I thought they were going to do with him. And that's 100% not what they did with him. We had a whole episode that we were going to record and drop about the second episode that the helmet implies a reveal that, like, if he's got the helmet on, they're going to take it off and they're going to show a character underneath. We were dead ass wrong about that. And
Yes.
he was green gas. That was what Marok was. He was Night Sister magic.
Which, you know, as much as I had other ideas of what I thought would be cool, I thought that was kind of cool.
It was kind of cool. I did kind of want there to be, like, somebody underneath that. I really did want there to be, I don't know, not necessarily Darth Maul.
A reanimated Savage.
You know, that would have been pretty cool also. Okay, let's dive in. We're talking about the entirety of the Ahsoka series because we fell off on
Yes.
doing a...
We did try to record episode 2. We did record episode 2, and then my camera footage was corrupted, and then we had to delay a week, and then we had to delay another week, and then we were just like, let's just wrap up the whole series at the end instead of trying to release late episodes.
Yeah, because it just...
recaps of every episode.
Like, there were, like... I think that we ended up having, like... There was one show that we were in one night. There was...
Damn, you know what? I'm
What?
not recording audio right now.
Oh.
Okay, now we're recording audio.
Uh-oh. Do you have anything usable from what we were just saying at all?
I mean, there's audio on the webcams, so we'll just have clearer audio now.
Oh, great. That's fine.
We're here to
We tried.
recap the Ahsoka series as a whole. We covered the premiere. Now we're here to talk about our thoughts on what we thought of it all together.
Yeah, pretty much start to finish. I mean, everything from episode 1 on. And I feel like there were... We'll get to the final episode because I think there were people who were disappointed with it. I thought it kicked ass.
I thought so too.
There were things... there were things that I was hoping were going to happen that did not happen. And it was not a super satisfying ending. But I think what we got out of it is satisfying in the respect that there is more Ahsoka series, or at least something bigger that's implied that's coming beyond that. A lot of unanswered questions. But yeah, we started talking about Marok. I am a little bit disappointed that he wasn't somebody, but I'm also maybe now more disappointed that there wasn't more dope Night Sister magic. Because if Morgan Elsbeth was able to, like, communicate beyond galaxies, right? And animate a lightsaber wielding corpse that, like, darn nearly fucked up a Jedi. She kind of got her ass handed to her for having that level of power. Like Ahsoka struggled,
Yeah.
but not that much. I mean, I guess she did take one of her lightsabers, which that's not nothing. That's substantial.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I felt like Morgan Elsbeth did not feel like as big of a threat at the end.
I mostly agree, only because she died at the end. So that just kind of means that there's maybe not any more of this, of the sort of Night Sister threat, the Night Sister magic, or any more sort of explanation into what the hell they have to do with all of this. I mean, he does kind of have a council of the Night Sisters, Thrawn does.
Yeah.
So they're still there, but I mean, like, what Morgan Elsbeth's goals and like why what they had to do with it is not super clear, and she definitely seemed pretty badass to kind of end the story so quickly.
The actual combat between the two, great.
First of all, the Blade of Talzin, that looked sick.
The whole lightsaber combat throughout the whole series,
I was gonna say the same.
Probably some of the best in Star Wars.
I can't think of
in live action Star Wars, at least.
I just remember
for sure.
Seeing throughout the whole series going like, this is really well done. Like, I think we even talked about it when we talked about the first episode. The combat is really well done. It doesn't feel clunky. It doesn't feel like there's, like stuff happening that's just extra flourish to make it look like there's more movement going on. The fight choreography throughout the whole show is great.
There's also like some really cool because I like old samurai films, like you're like not just your Kurosawa stuff, but like that whole Shanbara Jidaigeki genre. And there is there's one shot between her and Baylan Skoll where they're like squaring off, and just like a subtle stance shift that feels like it might be a reference to like more than one movie, but it definitely looked a little bit like the end of Sanjuro, which it's Toshiro Mifune and Tatsuya Nakadai, and Tatsuya Nakadai ends up getting like cut, not in half, but he gets like hit with like one katana stroke and just like explodes with blood in like a way that like for like 1954, whenever it actually came out, was probably just like, holy shit, this is a lot. Well, this is way too much, but it was nuts, and it was iconic. But like, it was iconic also because like they were just squaring off, like taking each other's measure, and it wasn't protracted like that, but you still had like the stance and everything that they were like, I liked that element of like the unspoken method of combat where it's just like, hey, this is only going to be like so many sword strokes because we both are like, we're doing the battle in our heads almost entirely first. I don't know. I like that element.
Sort of Gene and Mugen in Samurai Champloo.
Samurai Champloo, yeah. Very much. Like it. The entire combat sequence for everything was pretty great.
Yeah, and I'm not like a stance nerd. You know how you hear people talk about like the different like forms that Jedi use? Like, I don't know anything about that other than kind of like vague references to it. But you mentioned the thing with Baylan Skoll. His way of wielding his lightsaber was like simultaneously really unique to him, but also like really strongly reminiscent in a few different ways of like a few different other characters that we've seen before. The thing that struck me kind of the most in his fight with Ahsoka was like, this feels like an Anakin thing, because it was just so like attack heavy, while also just like just brute force kind of feel. Like it was very, very Darth Vader, but also
a lot of his attacks felt like not mechanical, but just very rigid, kind of squarish almost. And it didn't,
like he was in a suit of armor, like a medieval like it was like he had a big broadsword,
like
you know what I mean?
like a Teutonic knight rather than like a samurai, where like a lot of Jedi, like Obi-Wan and like even Luke to some degree, and even Vader, like it feels like samurai stuff, and he felt very much like a completely different style of fighting. For sure.
Both Balin and Shin have definitely more aggressive fighting styles, which obviously plays into the fact that they're like dark Jedi or whatever. The one thing that I noticed about Balin especially is like he doesn't seem to be particularly dark side in his motivations and his like way of understanding the Force, which I think is really cool, especially in a villain, because, you know, like the lore of Star Wars is always so much like the dark side, it corrupts, and, you know, you get one taste of it and you essentially turn into a goblin and start shooting lightning out of your hands. But he's much more like measured and like even tempered, and seems to, at least in his own mind, have positive goals. And like he kept his word with Sabine when she handed over the relic, for example. Like that's not a thing that even someone who you might consider more morally gray, like a Dooku, like you could imagine that Dooku would just slaughter someone immediately after they do the thing that you want them to do. But Balin's kind of unique in that, and Shin on the other side kind of seems like it's maybe leading towards a pull to the light, like Kylo Ren type of pull to the light.
But it feels like she's definitely taking a darker turn, like a darker direction, especially with that, you know, the final episode where she finds those like bandits or whatever that crew is, and kind of forming them up. And yeah, I mean, it probably comes back also to the fact that they're like heavily Norse myth. Like isn't Skoll the wolf that chases the sun, and Hati chases the moon?
Yes.
So it makes sense, because it's like he's chasing the light. He's like darker and chasing the light side, and she's like, all of her coloring is like white and brighter, but she's chasing the dark side to a degree. Yeah. So there's a little yin yang to that also, I suppose. But there's also, like you mentioned, the not morally gray, but like the dark Jedi character, and how like you don't automatically turn into a goblin, like unlike but that's kind of the lore that started the groundwork for that lore got laid in Rebels with characters like the Bendu, right, where like that character had tremendous power, but was kind of not necessarily the best of both worlds, but wasn't
the embodiment of balance.
Yeah, wasn't deceitful by any stretch of the imagination. Was capable of anger, was capable of wrath, was capable of acting, you know, irrationally. But I mean, also there's Jedi that are capable of the same kind of stuff. Like he didn't do anything that was really necessarily dark side, but like maybe he taps into some of that, some of the illusions, some of the deception magic, I guess. Part of that. So I don't know. I'm curious to see where that goes. It's also interesting now that I actually have 2 episodes of Rebels that I need to watch. So the thematic, like the last couple of episodes, the like the motifs of the painting in the Jedi Temple and all of that, and the like that Force space that's kind of outside of time and space that gets unlocked from that temple is similar to where Ahsoka ended up. And
I'm forgetting what that space, they gave a name to it in the show.
I don't quite recall what it's called immediately, but yeah, the like that Ezra basically went back and pulled a past Ahsoka out of, you know, her fight with Vader, and then they got attacked by Palpatine it's not clear if he was like concurrent or like a future or past Palpatine. Either, I don't
just
think
some embodiment of him that exists outside of space and time. I don't know. It's sort of confusing.
Which is wild to think about too, because it's like if you throw this embodiment that does exist outside space and time, you know, you got to wonder, like, if you wanted to bring, I don't know, if you wanted to bring anybody back, now you have had the door open for that since like 2018.
Door labeled somehow.
Yep.
And then you just open that, and then whatever character you want comes through it.
Yeah.
Speaking of characters
Italian
coming
word
back
for it, which is Filoni. you can do anything you want in a magical space fantasy.
Of characters coming back, so I mean, we leave Balin standing on a cliff with faces carved in it.
Yeah,
with the face of the like gods of Mortis from the Clone Wars. I think it was like a 3-episode arc where Anakin and Ahsoka end up in this sort of metaphysical world where there's the father who kind of represents balance, and the son who represents the dark side, and the daughter who represents the light side. So the father's face is what's carved on that mountain right behind Balin. So it seems like he's been sort of responding to some kind of calling.
Wow.
And there's an interesting sort of like, how does that play into...
In the distance, you saw that like lightning, right? That he was like following. And like, I'm just pulling just because I've recently watched Rebels, right? Same situation with the Bendu, like manifested in like a form of lightning, and like a windstorm or whatever, right? But Kanan also had that calling, you know, because he had just lost his vision, and he's like meditating and he's hearing this voice calling him. So this is, I mean, is this something similar, but just from a greater distance? Is it the same thing that just is embodied throughout multiple galaxies? That's interesting to play with. And I don't know if we're going to get that answer even in necessarily this series, because it's clear, like, now that you mention that, because the stuff from Mortis, that also showed up. That was what was on the Jedi Temple also in Rebels.
Right.
So he's built that across like 3 series over a couple of decades of storytelling. So I don't know if we're going to get an answer to that in like a season 2, but that's crazy to think about. I had not considered that at all. And I literally only, like, I had completely forgotten about that until you mentioned it.
Such a cool arc in Clone Wars. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing with your life? Watch the Clone Wars. It's fantastic. But
it really is.
That's one of the better. I think it's a 3-episode arc. It's one of the better.
Clone Wars is probably Clone Wars and like adjacent attached stuff is probably some of the best Star Wars media, period. Like, and I mean, if you had to do away with live action or animated, I think it would genuinely be a very tough call.
Well, there's also just definitely so much more content in the animated stuff that's had more space to breathe.
For sure.
I mean, we haven't really even talked about Ahsoka, the titular character.
No, and that's wild, actually, isn't it?
But like, I think there was a strong theme of master and apprentice, both with Ahsoka's kind of training of Sabine and her failures in that, and then obviously the kind of flashbacks and reconnection with her and Anakin, and drawing the sort of parallels there. In one of the earlier episodes, I really liked the scene, and this is the one that we actually talked about in the episode that we're not going to be able to put out because there was no camera. But, you know, Ahsoka's trying to give Sabine instructions, and she's, of course, being resistant to it. And she just has a moment where she's like, you know, essentially just do your thing. I trust you to do it. And then once she does, like, they're kind of out of trouble once that happens. And it was kind of it was a good moment of going like, I remember when Anakin would not trust me versus when he would trust me to do things. And I wish I would have got some of that. You know, I feel like every sort of like master apprentice dynamic throughout Star Wars has always had that theme a little bit of like, especially Anakin and Obi-Wan, you know, him kind of being rebellious and not wanting to follow orders exactly and just kind of being resistant to authority. But yeah, there were a lot of good moments. Obviously, all the flashback stuff was super cool. Hayden Christensen is dope.
Yeah, and I feel like he maybe didn't ever. I feel like he kind of got a raw deal too. Like even when we were talking about that separate video of just him doing the actual combat.
Yeah.
For, was it episode 2 or 3? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it must have been 3. But it was wild, like how invested he was in it and how essential he was to making, you know, the prequels a valuable part of the whole storytelling that I don't even think I was initially receptive to. Cause like I was one of those, you know, not even elder nerds, you know, it's just like, guys, you know, after Phantom Menace, I think I remember coming out of it just being like, oh, Maul was cool, but he ate it like right away. And it just seemed, and I think I shit on it for a while, but man, I don't know, retrospect, a lot better than a lot of other franchise stuff.
Yeah.
And Hayden Christensen was definitely, even if you don't like the prequels, it was one of the best parts of them, arguably. It's hard to like act like he was bad in any of that.
Yeah, I think most people can acknowledge that like the dialogue was so corny at times, and it was just the writing of dialogue was bad and cheesy a lot.
Yeah,
the writing of the story was great.
Yeah, great story, terrible dialogue, and sometimes you get like great dialogue and a terrible story, right? That just is bonkers. I have a hot take on that I'm not necessarily going to drop because I don't think that's it might make people very mad. Never mind. How about
I was going to name someone and I won't either.
All good.
We'll back out of it because it's someone who I really like, but he makes me think good dialogue, but he's written some bad stories.
Yeah.
We'll talk. You know what? I'm going to say it and then I'll bleep it.
Yeah, that's a valid one. It has some bonkers movies that I absolutely adore, but like you look at the story and plot construction of stuff, you're like, was one of my favorite movies growing up, but it's just like
all the movies.
This is not, I don't know. Anyway, it just doesn't, there's so many parts of it where it's just like, this is just a very off the wall comedy, right. But it's like, it's not. Anyway, whatever.
I don't want to be seen as a hater as this person because I'm a huge fan, always have been. But
yeah, definitely not a hater. Agree.
Thoughts on Ezra? I'll let you take the lead here.
I think we did talk about how between the two of us about how dope his apparent respect to monk class. I think those were your words. Yeah. That ruled. Like the initial. When the initial reveal of Ezra and Thrawn, by the way, I think that was a dope episode, but it killed me that there were some people who were also very invested who ended up spoiling that, even though I was like, this is probably going to happen. I don't know. I don't want to. Don't do that to people.
You also don't know. You don't want to know when.
I don't want to know when. I don't want to know how. Like but I think the Ezra reveal was great because he does very much look like an aged up Ezra, and he's also got the blue on blue eyes, which is it's definitely always been a Dune nod in its own way. So you get the little bit of Muad'Dibness in there, but he also his method of fighting in the episode immediately following that was so. It was so like judo aikido, like fluid, like you're like using the force almost like water. Like there was very little like actual aggressive contact and a lot of like using everybody else's energy against them on their own and redirecting it. I thought that was dope.
Very Avatar: The Last Airbender style fighting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, very much. Very a lot of he had always done a lot of force pushing though, but like he leveled it up in this, and it makes me question, like, we haven't gotten into like how far he's advanced on his own since he's been stuck, because it's been 8 years.
9.
Okay. So yeah, that's, and not only has he survived, he's like, again, in like this race of non-humanoid turtle people.
I would almost call them like hermit crabs.
Yeah, a little bit. Like they're a cross between like turtle and crab, and but they also are like they're guys. Like turtle crab hobbits. Like they dress like
they have
hobbits.
Little huts too.
I mean, it was sort of like, of course he's going to make friends with this, like, you know, because there was always that connection with animals and everything. You know, throughout Rebels. I thought that was really cool about it.
I do think it's still funny that even in another galaxy that the Star Wars trope of like, I'm going to speak in English and you speak in this weird language and we just understand each other.
Yep. Still happening. I think they even had like subtitles for whatever the language is called, and I don't even remember what it was. Okay, that aside, we're talking about Ezra. Also dope element that he ended up, or Huyang gave him an emitter from Kanan's lightsaber, which was like a duplicate of the other one. So he made a Kanan lightsaber clone, which also begs the question, where the hell did he get a kyber crystal? You know, but I assume, you know, Huyang just had one. I don't know. Whatever.
He's the lightsaber guy.
Yeah,
he's got him.
Yeah, maybe he's okay. I mean, you would think he probably does.
He made the younglings go collect them on his own, but
right, like, out of ice caves and get stuck in shit.
The Jedi have been gone for a pretty long time. It's not. Yeah.
Well, and you also have to assume that, like, since the Empire was like collecting and aggregating as much kyber as they could, maybe he went and collected a whole bunch of it preemptively. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. That aside, yeah, Ezra was dope. I also thought the continued trope of him taking a costume and ending up with the helmet from an Imperial also carried forward here. But I think that cliffhanger, that was maybe the most satisfying thing to me out of the final episode. But there's a lot of stuff that just, I wish this could have been either longer or shorter.
The first few episodes could have been condensed. I would say the first 4 episodes could have been 2. That was kind of my assessment of the first half of the series moved really slowly.
Yeah.
We could have gotten to this distant galaxy on episode 3.
Yeah.
And really shortened a lot of the stuff that took place in the first.
We could have gotten into more of what the hell Enoch's deal was. We could have gotten more into
another mystery mask.
Some of the there's no what is the deal with introducing like characters like this? Like, why did they? I saw that they had made like a Black Series Marok figure, and it's just like, what was the point of doing that? There's no, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's Star Wars. You're going to make a toy of everything, but also, geez, I don't know. There were a lot of things I wish that they had explored a little more. You know, the original Night Sisters, some of their origin, what they're doing there, what they've been doing there. You know,
I do think, at least I hope, that since there's still, you know, a gang of Night Sisters, a coven, or whatever they refer to themselves as, who have the power to, you know, turn one of these Night Sisters into a glowing eye spooky witch like them, then there's still more to that to come.
Well, and unlike Dathomir, they're not in control of the whole planet. Right. They're like, they live there, they're inhabitants, but it's also clear that they aren't the only inhabitants of the planet. They're also not the only race that seems to inhabit it. Like, that's I think noteworthy and interesting, because we don't know the humanoids in the red armor that were like just traveling bandits or whatever. They didn't seem like they were Dathomirian.
No.
And I mean, granted, we didn't get helmets removed, but they didn't behave like that at all. And I feel like if they had been Dathomirian, why not just make them that way?
Right.
You know, dress them in the Night Brother garb.
Yeah, it would be weird to
whatever.
Sort of mask that literally and figuratively.
The other thing that I wanted to know a little bit more about that we didn't get into is why the cracks in the red tape and the stormtrooper armor. What happened? What is going on there? Like, what is the literal red tape? Like, is Thrawn that much of a bureaucrat that he boom? Like, but also,
I mean, kind of. Yeah.
A little bit, but it's just, it was also wild, like how much more the cult of personality had gotten with Thrawn. Like his initial reveal and the whole Star Destroyer, like showing up over the rock, the temple or whatever. That was great. But it's wild how devoted like the rest of the crew of the Star Destroyer was to him at this point. What was also super crazy to me is not super crazy, but just maybe kind of great is the only point at which you see Thrawn scared in any media so far was when he recognized that Ahsoka was the Padawan and apprentice of Anakin Skywalker, and he did the math because that means he also is aware of who Anakin Skywalker is and became one of the few. So he did the math and he was like, oh fuck. So
yeah, this is a problem.
Yeah. Especially considering the fact that not only did like Vader and multiple other people try and take her out, but they also were not successful. Vader was not successful.
Yeah.
Even though he was very earnest in trying to make that happen. So yeah, definitely a problem. So I feel like even for her being the titular character, we still haven't spent that much time on it. But I think we did spend most of the first episode, discussing how great Rosario Dawson is and like how awesome it is that Ahsoka ended up live action anyway.
Throughout the whole series, I mean, she killed it as far as just like nailing the character for who she is. Just like everything about how she walks, how she talks, how she moves her eyes and her mouth.
Yeah.
Just absolutely uncanny on how well done of a performance that is. I thought Ezra was very well cast and very well acted as well. Sabine also very good. Sabine, little bit more interesting, honestly, as a live action character than she was in most of Rebels.
She had her Rebels moments, that's for sure, but there was definitely like they didn't really get too much into like how like she definitely seems like she's matured, but then they didn't get into how much losing her entire family and entire culture would have affected her. And, once Hu Yang did like really quickly touch on that, I was just like, oh, that's why she's so much flatter in this, like her affect is a little bit more shell shocked.
Mm-hmm. It was more focused on Ahsoka abandoning her. And then that was kind of just driven home as the point of like, once Ahsoka isn't there, she doesn't have anyone else to go to. That was it. Why would you feel any? A little disappointed we never got Zeb. I was excited and looking forward to a Zeb appearance, but we didn't get that. Maybe season 2.
We got an Anakin Force Ghost at the very end, which was dope. But he also like it's noteworthy that he's not like actually smiling. I mean, he's just looking like, and it's cool that he's like keeping watch, and he's still, clearly, as at the end of Return of the Jedi, it's back to Anakin, not a big old fat guy Anakin, but Anakin as we knew him, Anakin, great. But man, whatever was going on there, I don't know. I don't know what that means. Just this sort of stern, or like, it wasn't a stern expression. It was almost like one of like longing and maybe not even regret, but just like a kind of, almost like he was there to watch, like, because he hadn't been able to be there.
It was solemn.
Yeah, it was.
For sure. Yeah. Any gripes? Any grievances? Or any counters to grievances that you've been hearing about the show?
I mean, a little of both. Like, I see people's points where they're just like, they didn't tie up this, they didn't tie up this, they didn't tie up this. And they didn't wrap everything up in a neat little bow, because if I think that you don't, it's the same thing that I'm saying to people who are angry about the current run of Spider-Man comics. Like, you're mad about the way this has turned out, but don't you eventually want to see a conflict that is interesting to play out in the story that you like? Or do you want it to all be easy? You wanted Ahsoka to take Thrawn out and the Star Destroyer there on that planet, and there be what? No season 2?
And just no more show.
You're annoyed that, like, look, there are elements of it that are unsatisfying. Like, Ahsoka failed to stop Thrawn. He brought whatever was in those containers on the which, what the hell is that? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. They clearly they can revive dark troopers. They can revive stormtroopers into undead troopers or death troopers or whatever we're going to call those now.
Yeah. I'm curious on the logic of how those work. How long can they stay reanimated? What actually takes them down permanently?
Clearly getting your head chopped off by a lightsaber will do it.
Yeah. Gotta have the head attached.
Yeah. But there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. There's a lot of things about culture that are unanswered. But like, if you want things to be wrapped up in a neat little bow, if you don't like Star Wars serials, I do also get some people's points where they're like, oh, there's too much. Like, okay. I get it, because I feel that way about like Marvel stuff. Like, there was definitely too much Marvel. The difference is that when they started Disney Plusing Marvel, they just had they literally admitted it in an article. They didn't know how to run a TV studio thing. Filoni and Favreau have had their hand dipped in making TV and running shows for decades.
Specifically these Star Wars shows.
Yeah. So you're going to tell me these aren't better? They actually very much are. They're probably the best thing coming out on Disney Plus.
Also, they did not shoehorn Mando into this, and they absolutely deserve credit for that, because it would have been very easy for them to check in on Mando and Grogu just to please the audience and fucking derail it like they did with the Book of Boba Fett. And maybe it's a little bit of they learned from that, and maybe it's like, we don't need to do that for this. But either way, I felt like that would have scored them easy points, an easy way to get people to make sure, oh, well, you got to watch Ahsoka because you're not caught up on Mando if you don't watch it. Just from a strictly like business side, like a business perspective, that would have made sense for them to do. And I think we even talked about it when we recorded the first episode. Because
I think we had an over-under, like we were both expecting, he'll probably show up at some point.
I'm glad they didn't. I think it's a good move for them to let this show stand on its own.
It's weird that Zeb showed up in Mando and not in this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's also weird that like Carson Teva, it was in this Big and Bad.
That's true.
I don't know. It's also wild to me that they're acting like Mon Mothma didn't age in 20 years?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
It's like at least like 15 if we're taking Andor, right?
Yeah. It's almost like 20 years. So like, what is going on Chandrila? Where like, what do they eat? Is it just like a lot of biotin and just like, it's just like straight up seaweed? Like that's all seaweed and algae. And they just get like very little sun, great exercise just because.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see like, how do you try to
reconcile that?
Well, how do you try to even age an actress?
Well, I mean,
to like a midpoint from where you have her like appearing as she looks in real life versus the age where she's supposed to be. Much
action
on.
Yeah, live action Hera makes sense, right? Because like she's in her early 20s. Well, and also like Twi'leks also age the same as humans.
I want to say they age similarly to humans.
Okay.
But we also don't see a lot of what they look like when they're in their like 60s plus.
Yeah.
Like, there's no real example that I can think of.
Not in live action for sure. Other than
old.
Is Bib Fortuna Twi'lek? Bib Fortuna's Twi'lek, right? Isn't he?
I think so, but he's also basically like a little monster goblin man.
Well, yeah, that's true. I guess I had things that I wasn't satisfied with. But like I said, like you can't have a good story if you wrap everything up with a neat little bow and all the characters end up happy, right? Because that doesn't make you interested in seeing like if the level of storytelling that you want is everything wrapped up in a neat little bow and then like a post-credits scene with like, I'm Flingus Dumbus and I'm very angry and I'm coming for the hero next time. Like, that's terrible. That's terrible foreshadow. Like, Thrawn's gonna like straight up really screw up the galaxy.
Yeah, I mean he made it back to the galaxy.
Right.
He's back. He's reunited with Hera. And then Ahsoka and Sabine are stuck there for now.
Yeah.
Along with Balin and Hati and whatever else is going to happen back in that galaxy. Like, I don't think that leaves things, to like, oh no, what's going to happen? Like, we have kind of a logical idea of like, yeah, some things are apparent. There's some conflict built in there,
right?
That doesn't seem too confusing about on a base level.
Yeah. There's definitely things that we can presume are going to happen.
What the protagonist goals are, or we know what the villain's goals are. So we definitely know what the protagonist goals are in terms of Ahsoka and Sabine. They need to get the fuck out of there. And they need to get back to their place. We don't know what Balin's, up to there. And then on the other side of things,
we don't who he's trying to meet or awaken. Yeah,
and then back in our more familiar galaxy, we know what Thrawn's goals are, is to resurrect the Empire.
What did he bring back with him? What's in those crates?
We just have a few mysteries along with that, which are, of course, going to be explained. This isn't that much different than, the sort of cliffhangers that every season of The Mandalorian has ended with.
Yeah.
My gripe is still, I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead is terrible as Hera. I think it's awful. I don't know. It feels like she's not written right, which doesn't feel correct because that doesn't feel like a good enough explanation for it, because it's not like someone else came in and made the show who doesn't know anything about the character.
Right.
But like, she also has made decisions that feel weird to me, because she feels like she's the Star Wars mom. Yet here's my 11-year-old son with me in this like extremely dangerous situation that I brought. It's just me and him on this ship.
Yeah.
We could easily die. We just saw 6 other pilots die. good thing my 11-year-old son is here. That seems very weird of a decision for Hera to make. Hera would almost, in every situation in Rebels, strongly like condemn the youngsters for trying to tag along on something that's too dangerous for them to be in,
and trying to keep them out of harm's way.
Yeah, they don't listen, so there's always, and then some.
She was
scolding.
brave consistently, but not reckless, and there are decisions in this that feel like they are more reckless than they are brave.
Yeah.
So I feel that
there is some what feels like inconsistent with Hera as a character, but man, she just Mary Elizabeth Winstead does not seem like, she does not embody Hera to me. It feels weird. It just seems off. And I think I told you this, but like most of the stuff I see online is people like praising this casting decision, which actually makes me feel more right in not liking it. Because Star Wars fans are so usually consistently and loudly incorrect about their opinions that I'm like, if I disagree with this, I must be on to something here.
I'm definitely in that camp. Also, I'm with you.
I don't hate it, but it definitely takes me out.
It
especially
doesn't kill
in
me.
comparison to the other characters that feel like that kind of make me go like, wow, damn, this is a really good job of bringing this character that I know so well from the animated series to life. This feels like a completely, like someone who doesn't know the character is both acting it and writing it.
I think you make very valid points that I see and agree with. I don't feel quite as strongly about it. I felt almost like there were elements up until we got into like, obviously Sabine's like a little, traumatized by shit that went down in Mandalore. Up until that point where it like clicked, I was like, it just doesn't seem like Sabine, but also like she's aged. But like that doesn't account for some of the decisions that like Hera's made. It, like age hasn't like, so it's almost made her make decisions that seem a little wackier or just like a little stranger. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd say is in terms of like the best casting for like all this, the entire series, obviously Ahsoka, Ezra, perfect. I think.
Yes.
Thrawn, the only choice you could have made where it would have been good.
Perfect.
And then Ray Stevenson, Balin Skoll. Shin Hati was pretty great. I mean, like the actress.
Yeah. We don't have a ton of depth to her as a character yet, which is kind of fine. She very much seems like the
actress seems like a cool person.
Yeah, she does. But Shin Hati as a character seems very like kind of waiting to be molded,
right?
By someone with authority to kind of tell her what to do. She doesn't seem very sure of herself. But very cool character. One of the criticisms I've seen is, like memes and stuff, just like making fun of Thrawn being like, "Ooh, they escaped exactly according to my plan." And I'm like, all right, that's not really how that went down, though. It was more like, actually, we've kind of done the thing, and I don't really. It's kind of inconsequential. We can leave now, and they'll be
which is also a thing that like. That's what I kind of loved about that, because that's not a thing that most villains in like melodramatic shit do. They don't make the practical decision.
Mm-hmm.
A Doctor Doom, if half of the Fantastic Four had like escaped from him and almost foiled his plan of getting to like whatever his objective was, he would have turned, if one of them was Reed Richards or Sue Storm, he would have turned around and tried to crush them. Like he would not have, like it would have been the ultimate distraction. Thrawn, even if he is the biggest chip on his shoulder and the biggest axe to grind with like all the rest of them,
Mhm.
especially Ahsoka. Oh yeah, we should probably take that the potential future thorn in my side out. But no, you know what? Here's her objective. I'm going to go do the practical thing, unlike any other villain in science fiction for the most part.
He read The Art of War.
Right. Do what you've got to get done. That's what they were trying to prevent him from doing, and he went and did it. Like, sorry, that's it. That's a villain win, and in that, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I think excellent point in that respect.
And I do think that's kind of a like. Honestly, that's the Emperor's style. Is not so much like, oh wow, the Emperor really needed all these things to fall into place for him to be able to secure his power. It's like, no, he had contingencies in place so that he set up win-wins for him,
right?
Regardless, it wasn't that like, oh well, if they had actually, if Jango Fett had actually killed Padme, then they would have, found out. He would have found out about they would have found out about the clone army too quickly, and it's like, no, that's not how that would have went down. He would have just eliminated a potential thorn in his side earlier and had that piece off of the chessboard. He had many things going on. It wasn't like this one specific thing needed to happen. So it's just, I think that falls into place in terms of kind of how the Empire works in Star Wars, and exactly why someone like Thrawn would have secured such a position in the Empire, especially as a chiss.
Right. You're like one of the only non-humans.
Yeah,
who's,
in a place of like eradicating aliens, genociding them.
Yeah, you're basically like the only, non-human Imperial officer that's only non-human Imperial officer.
Yeah.
I don't think there is another one, but
I don't think so either.
No, it's wild. And that's, I think, what makes him a great villain. In a lot of ways, not necessarily that. I just mean the fact that he's like cold, cruel, calculated, and makes practical decisions rather than letting emotions get in the way. And that's scarier in a lot of ways. Somebody who is a very effective fascist.
Yes.
Really, really, really good at just being brutal and tyrannical, is a whole lot scarier in some ways than Darth Vader, because Darth Vader is just going to kill you, like, if he gets the opportunity. Thrawn will find a way to like crush everybody else's spirit around you, and maybe like just if he lets you live, he's going to ruin your entire life, and you're never going to forget it. Like, it's I don't know, not there's fates worse than death, and Thrawn's the kind of character that brings those.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't know. Any other final thoughts? I don't know. Do we instead get Ahsoka season 2, or is Filoni and Favreau gearing up to a film?
Oh, I hadn't even considered that. I had kind of just thought, without a doubt, it would be a Ahsoka season 2.
I think that they should let. I think that there should be a big budget Favreau Filoni trilogy.
I think so too.
And just let them make that in their almost Skywalker absent post Old Republic pre-Resistance universe.
I agree. I think at least for the time being, as far as what comes next, I think season 2 of Ahsoka is most likely, and that they'll probably do at least another season of The Mandalorian before bringing maybe all of it together for
The Mandalorian, I think, is like one of the few things that is consistently keeping subscribers to Disney Plus. They are not going to stop making Mandalorian.
The goddamn
TV.
Marvel shows aren't doing it.
No. I mean, I have fallen off on that big time. And I am
Me
the
too.
last person that you would have wanted or expected to fall off on that completely.
Me too. And I kind of liked She-Hulk.
I kind of did too. There were aspects of it that I was like, this is fine.
Mhm.
I vehemently disliked the early parts of WandaVision, and that colored things for me in a big way. Loki, I enjoyed very much. This is entirely separate. The current
season 2.
the stuff in season 2 feels like another regular Marvel show that wasn't Loki.
Gotcha.
It doesn't feel like things are changing, and it feels like it moves at like a plodding pace.
Yeah, I've started to become disinterested in all of Marvel stuff in a way that I really didn't think I ever would.
I didn't watch
I
Secret
don't feel
Invasion at
Yeah,
all.
I didn't either. I still haven't watched Quantumania
Oh yeah,
or Guardians of the Galaxy, and I need to watch Guardians of the
Guardians
Galaxy.
of the
I've heard
Galaxy
all
3
good
is
things
worth your
about it,
time.
but I think that Star Wars is a good comparison to go like, this is the kind of stuff that
Yes.
we could be making. This is the
Yeah.
kind of stuff that
And
could be out there, that could be driving subscribers, especially if you're gonna make it more expensive. Thanks, Disney. But like, The Mandalorian has been great. A lot of people had beef with the Book of Boba Fett. I thought it was okay. I liked it. I didn't have any problems with it.
I mean, if your whole beef was it wasn't all Boba Fett, all right.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, but okay.
I also think that there's some level of, whenever there's mystery surrounding something, whether that's a character or whether that's like how people use the Force.
Yeah.
When you give an explanation for it,
Oh, yeah.
you're bound to disappoint people.
100%.
So when you say it's midichlorians that give people the ability to use the Force, it's going to drive some people crazy. It's going to bum some people out. Same thing when you give Boba Fett I
haven't forgiven Marvel for giving Wolverine an origin. Like you took a guy who could be maybe 1,000 years old or maybe, 200 years old, and you gave him an origin and you just made him some guy from Canada instead of some guy who's lived a whole bunch of lives.
Right.
Man, you could have done anything, and you could have done that forever, and you could have kept the origin a mystery. Like the Joker. You made a Joker film where you gave the Joker an origin. Makes him way less scary as a character.
Yeah.
You take that mystery out. You're 100% right about that. It's just you screw that up. And that's what made Boba Fett cool. It's just a weirdo in an armor.
Even though he's my favorite character, the Kenobi series wasn't the best.
No. I agree with that.
It
definitely had some huge moments, but it should have just been a film.
I completely agree. Even if it was just a really long one that we went like, ooh, this is 3 hours. I would have been happy with that.
Or just a 2-part thing that's on Disney Plus alone. I would have been fine with that too. I would rather quality over quantity.
But not even just in terms of filler, but there was quality issues in terms of we just spent a long time talking about how the fight choreography in this was so good. Yeah. And that there weren't really moments where you had to go oh, come on, what even, how does this work? Outside of, the literal magic that, of course, we don't know how that works. We don't know how the resurrection
Night Sister stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know how that works. That just sparks some curiosity more than
you have witches that do magic. More than
Obi-Wan Kenobi running down a corridor of water flooding in and then
somehow getting out before the water floods out.
And somehow but there's water shooting in and he's closing the door behind him. It was so silly and dumb. Just make the water push him out. And then he uses the Force to close it.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
There are better ways to do this. Anyways, that's nitpicking an entirely different show. When I'm trying to say that I think Star Wars is overall doing a much better job. Andor is legit the best.
It's the best anything on Disney Plus. Yeah, it's the best anything at all that's original to Disney Plus. No question about that.
In terms of how where I see Ahsoka ranking with this, I put it up there with The Mandalorian. Still behind Andor. But I was also just really excited for this more. I was more excited for the premiere of Ahsoka than I was for the next season of The Mandalorian, and I fucking love The Mandalorian, but mostly because it's cashing in on some Rebels nostalgia.
Oh, for sure.
But also because it, you know, is still timely to the timeline of The Mandalorian. But
can we take a quick break?
Yeah, and do you want to just wrap up?
Oh yeah.
We will definitely reconvene to do more content like this when more Star Wars content comes out. Maybe even sometimes in between, we've kicked around some ideas of we just have conversations like this all the time, and why not put a microphone in front of it?
On a variety of subjects. So we'll see if that materializes. Some of those subjects might not be palatable for everybody, but
it might be a different YouTube channel that goes on.
We might have to do a spin-off channel for that entirely. But if anything's going to get us canceled, it'll be that.
Yes.
Definitely more Star Wars content will probably come. I hate using the word content. I don't like that, but we'll definitely have more discussions.
Content.
Yeah.
Anyways, Ahsoka was dope.
I enjoyed it. I think it was really well bookended.
If you haven't watched it, why did you listen to us spoil all of it? You should go watch it. But we give it a thumbs up.
4 thumbs up.
4 thumbs up. Who has 4 thumbs in liked Ahsoka? These guys.
That's right.
All right. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching.